The crystal chandeliers scattered soft light across the gleaming marble floor, each sparkle reflected in the polished surface like ripples of frozen starlight. Isabella Hartwell stood near one of the grand pillars, her hand smoothing the fabric of her plain black dress. She could have worn any number of couture gowns from her private collection, but tonight she had chosen the simplest thing in her wardrobe, your deliberate disguise. At 28, Isabella had mastered the art of becoming invisible in a room full of people desperate to be seen. Simplicity was her armor. The Belmont Hotel's grand ballroom shimmered with the presence of New York's wealthy stack visionaries whose innovations had changed the world. All magnates whose fortunes were generations old, and scions of families whose last names were etched into the city's history. Their conversations floated like champagne bubbles, bursting with polite laughter and subtle boasts. Isabella glided through the crowd, her expression calm, her movements unhurried, her eyes, trained by years of reading boardrooms like battlefields, quietly catalogued faces and alliances. No one here would guess that the modest woman in the corner commanded a technology empire valued at over $12 billion. No one suspected she was the elusive CEO behind one of the most disruptive companies of the decade. "Excuse me," the voice deep, warm, edged with curiosity pulled her from her thoughts. Isabella turned and found herself face to face with Adrian Kane. His presence was resting, tall, broad-shouldered, with piercing blue eyes that seemed to search deeper than most people dared. She recognized him instantly. He was the driving force behind Kane Global, a powerful conglomerate that had been trying to unsuccessfully acquire one of her smaller companies for months. Adrian Kane, she acknowledged inwardly, though outwardly her expression remained politely puzzled. "You're Isabel Turner, right?" he asked, his voice certain, his gaze unwavering. Her heart gave a startled lurch. She had never gone by that name in her life. "I'm afraid you have me mistaken for someone else," Isabella replied, her tone soft but steady. Adrian's brow furrowed slightly. Yaki stepped closer, the faint scent of expensive cologne mingling with the roses ranged on the tables around them. "No, I'm sure of it. We were at Columbia together. You always sat in the back row of Professor Warren's economics class, scribbling in that little blue notebook. You helped me survive the semester." Isabella blinked. Columbia? She had never set foot on the campus. Her education had been private tutors and hand-picked mentors, ranged by her grandfather after her parents' fatal car accident when she was 16. "You must be thinking of someone else," she said again, though something in his earnest certainty made her pause. He studied her face as if confirming a memory etched years ago. "Isabel Turner from Portland, Oregon. Your dad worked in the lumber mill. Your mom taught at the local high school. You were always worried about student loans and worked 3 jobs to pay for classes." The specificity of the details disarmed her. Whoever this Isabel Turner was, she had clearly left a deep mark on Adrian Kane. "You remember all of that from college?" Isabella asked, tilting her head in cautious curiosity. Adrian smiled softly this time, and for a fleeting moment, his polished, businesslike demeanor fell away, revealing something unguarded. "You helped me through organic chemistry. I would have failed without you. I've always wondered what happened to you after graduation." Something inside Isabella shifted. She could correct him now, tell him the truth, and walk away. But instead, she found herself saying something entirely different. "Life has been challenging," she murmured, slipping into the role almost instinctively. "I can imagine," Adrian said, and there was genuine concern in his voice. "Are you doing okay? Financially, I mean, I know how tough it can be." The absurdity almost made her laugh. Her personal accounts could rival the GDP of a small country. Instead, she lowered her gaze, letting a small shrug convey modest endurance. "I manage," she said simply. Adrian's expression softened further. "You helped me back then. Let me help you now." "That's kind of you," Isabella replied, her voice carrying the perfect balance of gratitude and hesitation. "It's not charity," Adrian insisted quickly. "I have contacts all over the city. I could introduce you to people who need your skills." "You're brilliant, Isabella. You shouldn't be struggling." For a moment, Her chest tightened. When was the last time someone had wanted to help her without knowing who she was or what she owned? When was the last time someone saw just a woman on a headline, not a net worth? I work in consulting, she said vaguely. That's great, Adrian replied, leaning in with interest. What kind of consulting? Business strategy, tech implementation, organizational restructuring, she listed smoothly. His eyes lit up. Exactly the kind of expertise I need. Kane Global has been wrestling with outdated systems for too long. We could use a fresh perspective. She resisted the urge to smirk. If she wanted, she could fix Kane Global's problems in a matter of days. She'd already solved similar issues for her own companies years ago. But that would ruin the game. I'd be open to learning more, she said instead. Fantastic, Adrian replied, already fishing a sleek card from his inner jacket pocket. My direct line's on there. Call me tomorrow, and we'll set something up. She accepted the card, running her fingers over the embossed lettering. It's generous of you, she said. It's the least I can do, he replied sincerely. I never forgot how much your tutoring meant to me back then. I was pre-med and completely lost. You made it make sense. Pre-med, she repeated. My father had other plans, Adrian explained, a shadow passing briefly across his features. Kane Global needed an heir. My older brother wasn't suited for the role. I'm sorry, she said quietly. He shrugged. I've made peace with it. Business has been good to me, good enough that I can help old friends when they need it. Old friends. The phrase settled over her, warm and unexpectedly intimate. Then, he surprised her again. Would you like to dance? She hesitated. Dancing with him would be crossing an invisible line, stepping from harmless deception into something infinitely riskier. But his eyes held hers, and something in them dismantled her usual defenses. Yes, she heard herself say. His hand was warm and steady as he led her to the dance floor. The band played a slow jazz melody, and Adrian's arm slid lightly around her waist. She was used to calculated interactions, dinners where every word was measured for its business value. But this felt unguarded. Real. You're a good dancer, she observed. Boarding school, he replied with a faintly self-conscious smile. They made us take ballroom lessons. I hated it at the time, but I guess it's useful now. Boarding school sounds lonely. It was, he admitted. College was the first time I felt like I could be myself, make real friends. People like you. A pang of guilt cut through her. He was opening up to someone he thought he knew, and she was lying to him with every step they took. She changed the subject, asking about his work, and his enthusiasm came alive. He spoke about Kane Global's expansion plans, his frustrations with stagnant systems, and competitors who seemed to anticipate the market before it shifted. Isabella listened, impressed despite herself. She mentally ticked off the flaws in his company's execution and recognized the precision with which her own organization had stayed ahead of his. Then he mentioned one competitor in particular. There's this mystery firm, Horizon Dynamics. Her heartbeat stumbled. Horizon Dynamics was hers. They're everywhere, Adrian continued, snapping up smaller firms, rolling out innovations overnight. The CEO is a recluse. No one knows who runs it. It's like fighting a ghost. Sounds intriguing, she managed. It's frustrating, he admitted with a rueful laugh. But enough about work. What about you? What have you been doing all these years? She knew she was at a crossroads. She could end it, no walk away before the lie grew to tangled. That would be the wise thing to do. But wisdom had never looked at her the way Adrian Kane was looking at her now, as if she were the only person who mattered in the room. I've been surviving, she said quietly. Then you have someone in your corner now, he said firmly. Her chest ached at the simple sincerity of the promise. When the song ended, she didn't walk away. She stayed still in his arms, knowing she had just made a choice that would change everything. The next morning, the city shimmered under a pale winter sun, light reflecting off glass towers and clean, sharp lines. Isabella Hartwell stood in her penthouse office, 50 floors above the restless hum of Manhattan, coffee in hand, her gaze fixed on the view. The charity gala now felt like a dream, yet the small rectangle of embossed cardstock lying on her mahogany desk proved it had been real. She picked it up, running her thumb along the edges, as if the texture could anger her to last night's unexpected connection. "Please tell me you didn't stay up all night with quarterly reports again." Her assistant, Maya Lopez, swept in, balancing a tablet loaded with morning market data and a fresh cappuccino. Meyer had been by Isabella's side since their MBA days at Wharton Sharp, loyal, one of the very few who knew the extent of her empire and the isolation that came with it. Isabella smiled faintly but didn't turn from the window. "I met someone." Maya stopped short. "Met someone? As in an actual man? A breathing, living human who doesn't know your net worth?" "It's complicated," Isabella admitted, finally turning. "He thinks I'm someone else, a woman from his college, someone who grew up struggling." Meyer arched an eyebrow. "And you didn't correct him?" "I don't know why," Isabella murmured, setting the card down. "His name is Adrian Kane." Maya's eyes widened. "Kane Global's Adrian Kane? The same Adrian Kane who's been trying to buy Northbridge Systems." "One of ours," Isabella confirmed quietly. Meyer whistled low. "He has no idea you're the owner. Not a clue." "This is dangerous," Maya warned, dropping into the chair across from Isabella's desk. "What happens when he finds out you've been lying? That you let him believe you were someone else entirely?" "I don't know," Isabella admitted, but she remembered the warmth in Adrian's voice when he'd offered to help her, how he'd looked at her as though she were worth protecting, without knowing the billions attached to her name. That feeling, unguarded and rare, was something she wasn't ready to lose. Her desk phone rang, cutting into the moment. "Isabella Turner," came the familiar voice, rich and warm. Her lips curved before she could stop herself. "Good morning, Adrian. Hope I'm not interrupting anything important." "Just paperwork," she lied, though the contracts before her represented deals worth hundreds of millions. "Then maybe I can tempt you. How about lunch today?" "I meant what I said last night. I want to introduce you to some people who could use your consulting skills. I'm meeting a potential client this afternoon, and I think you'd be perfect for their project." The idea knotted her stomach. Odds were, this client was actually one of her own companies. Still, she heard herself say, "That sounds wonderful." "Excellent. 11 Madison Park, noon. I'll make the reservation." She hesitated. "That's an expensive place." "I told you I owe you, and first impressions matter in business. You'll want to look the part." When she hung up, Isabella sat still for a moment, the irony twisting in her chest. Adrian Kane was about to spend hundreds of dollars treating a struggling consultant to lunch at a restaurant she could buy outright. The lunch, by noon, 11 Madison Park, was alive with quiet conversation and the discreet clink of silverware against fine china. The air carried the subtle perfume of roasted vegetables, fresh herbs, and truffle oil. Isabella arrived early, choosing a modest yet professional dress elegant enough to look credible to Adrian, understated enough to support her weight. When Adrian entered, the room seemed to notice. Heads turned, the dark charcoal suit, the sure stride, the understated luxury of a man who never needed to try too hard. "You look beautiful," he said, leaning in to brush a kiss against her cheek. "Thank you," she replied softly. "This place is incredible," she added, feigning awe, though she'd dined here countless times. "I wanted to make the right impression," he said, pulling out her chair. "The client we're meeting values image as much as results." As she settled, her gaze swept the room and froze. In a shadowed corner, a man sat alone, skimming through what looked like a financial report. Even from here, she recognized him. Damian Cross, CEO of Crosswell Holdings, one of Adrian's most aggressive rivals. Ruthless, charming when it suited him, Damian was infamous for uncovering the secrets others would kill to keep. Their eyes met. His expression shifted from mild curiosity to sharp recognition, and her blood went cold. The rival's game. "So, tell me about your consulting work," Adrian said, oblivious to the sullen tension radiating from across the room. She forced her focus back to him. "Organizational restructuring, technology integration. I help companies adapt to shifting market conditions. That's exactly what Kane Global needs, Adrian said with a grin. We've been bleeding money on digital overhauls that never quite work. If we could modernize, we'd regain ground fast. She nodded, hiding the fact that she already knew every detail of his company's failures. Her own analysts had studied them in depth. Before she could answer, a shadow fell across their table. Well, Adrian Kane, Damien Cross said smoothly. What an unexpected pleasure. Adrian's posture stiffened instantly. Damien, I didn't see you come in. I was just finishing lunch when I noticed you with such lovely company. Damien's gaze shifted to Isabella, the gleam in his eyes pure mischief. I don't believe we've met. She hesitated, revealing her real name would unravel everything. Isabella Turner, she said, extending her hand. Turner, Damien repeated slowly, taking her hand and holding it just a moment too long. You look familiar. I don't think so, she said lightly. Oh, I have an excellent memory for faces, Damien replied, his smile hinting at the truth he was holding back. I'm sure it will come to me. Adrian's voice cooled. We're having a private lunch. Of course, Damien said easily, though he didn't step away. Miss Turner, if you ever find yourself in need of new opportunities, Crosswell Holdings is always hiring, particularly consultants with your talents. Very kind, she said, keeping her tone neutral. With one last, knowing look, Damien left, but Isabella felt the threat linger in the air like smoke, a mother's instinct. Their conversation had barely recovered when an elegant woman in her 50s approached, silver hair swept into a chignon, a tailored suit cut to perfection. Margaret Kane. Isabella had seen her in the society pages, knew her reputation as a formidable philanthropist and businesswoman. James, Margaret began, then caught herself, smiling warmly at her son. I was having lunch nearby when I saw you. Adrian's jaw tightened. Mother, this is Isabella Turner. Isabella, my mother, Margaret Kane. Margaret's eyes flecked over Isabella in a single sweep, cataloging every detail. The modest dress, the understated jewelry, the lack of brand signals that most women in this room wore like armor. How do you know my son? We went to college together, Isabella said smoothly. Margaret's brow lifted slightly. How interesting. I don't recall him mentioning you. It was a long time ago, Adrian interjected quickly. Margaret ignored him. And what do you do now, Miss Turner? I'm in business consulting. How lovely. Her smile was polite, but glacial. Doing well for yourself? I get by, Isabella replied, careful not to sound either too successful or too pitiful. Margaret's eyes cooled by a fraction. I see. Well, it was lovely meeting you. When she was gone, Adrian sighed. I'm sorry. My mother can be protective of your money, Isabella said dryly. It's not about you, Adrian insisted, but she wasn't so sure. Margaret Kane had instincts honed over decades, and something told Isabella that the woman had just filed her under investigate further. Isabella's phone buzzed as she and Adrian finished their entrees. The discreet vibration was one she recognized instantly, Meyer's emergency signal. She glanced down at the message. Emergency board meeting. Hostile takeover attempt by Crosswell Holdings. Need you now. Her pulse spiked. Damien hadn't wasted a second. I'm sorry, she said, setting down her fork and pushing back her chair. I have a work emergency. Adrian's expression shifted to concern. What kind of emergency? A client crisis. I need to leave immediately. I'll drive you, he offered, already reaching for his jacket. No, that's not necessary. Thank you for lunch. She rose. But before she could step away, Adrian caught her hand. You look terrified, he said softly. What's really going on? For a heartbeat. She wanted to tell him everything, that she was one of the most powerful business leaders in the country, that Damien Cross was trying to dismantle her empire, that the woman he thought she was didn't exist. Instead, she squeezed his hand once and said, I'll call you later. The Crosswell strike. By the time Isabella reached her headquarters, the air was electric with urgency. The elevator doors opened to reveal Meyer waiting, her expression grim. "It's worse than I thought," Maya said as they hurried toward the executive suite. "Damien isn't just going after Northbridge Systems. He's targeting 3 of our subsidiary companies all at once." "He knows," Isabella said, her mind racing. "He recognized you at the restaurant," Maya confirmed, "and he's using that knowledge to push hard and fast." Inside the boardroom, screens displayed live market data. Red numbers cascaded like falling dominoes. The targeted subsidiaries' stock prices were dropping under the weight of Damien's aggressive bids. "We can block him if we move quickly," Maya said. "Liquidate certain assets, restructure ownership, make it impossible for him to trace the connections back to Horizon Dynamics." Isabella nodded, though her mind wasn't entirely on the numbers. She kept seeing Adrian's face, the unguarded sincerity when he'd promised to help her. "There's something else," Maya added, her voice lower. "I looked into the real Isabella Turner, the one Adrian thinks you are." Isabella's steps faltered. "And she died 3 years ago. Car accident. Portland." The words hit like a blow. Adrian wasn't just remembering a college acquaintance, he was mourning someone he'd once cared about. Someone gone forever. And she had stepped into that ghost shadow without realizing it. The crossroads. "I have to tell him the truth," Isabella said quietly, staring at the market charts without really seeing them. "You can't," Maya said sharply. "Not now. If Adrian finds out who you really are, and that you've been lying, he could use it against you. King Global would benefit enormously from Horizon Dynamics' collapse." Isabella shook her head. "That's not who he is." Maya gave her a look. "You've known him for one night." Before Isabella could reply, her phone lit up with Adrian's name. Against her better judgment, she answered. "Isabella, thank God," he said, his voice tight. "I've been trying to reach you all night. Something's happening in the business world, hostile takeovers, corporate wars between tech giants. I'm worried it could affect your clients." She swallowed hard. Even now, even as his own company was likely feeling the tremors, he was thinking about her fictional consulting work. "I'll be fine," she said softly. "No, you won't," Adrian countered. "That's why I'm calling. I want to offer you something more stable. King Global could use someone like you full-time. The salary would be generous, the job secure. Let me take care of you." Her throat tightened. "Adrian, I can't. Don't say no yet. Just meet me at the office today. Let me show you what we're working on, please." The ambush. King Global's headquarters occupied 15 floors of a sleek midtown tower. Isabella had never stepped inside, though she knew every detail from her intelligence reports. Riding the elevator up felt like walking into an execution she agreed to. Adrian was waiting in his corner office, but he wasn't alone. Margaret Kane sat in one of the leather chairs facing his desk, her posture regal, her expression unreadable. Standing beside her was a man in an immaculate navy suit, mid-40s, sharp-eyed, carrying a thick folder. "An investigator." "Isabella," Adrian said, rising. "I hope you don't mind. My mother wanted to join us." Her pulse quickened. "This was no casual meeting, Miss Turner," Margaret said, her voice cool as crystal. "Or should I say Miss Hartwell?" The air seemed to vanish from the room. The investigator stepped forward, opening the folder and spreading photographs across the desk, images of Isabella at international business summits, speaking at technology forums, accepting awards under her real name. Adrian stared at them, his gaze flicking between the photos and her face. Confusion, recognition, betrayal. "This is impossible," he said, but his voice lacked conviction. Margaret's tone was cutting. "Isabella Hartwell, founder and CEO of Horizon Dynamics. Net worth, $12 billion. Properties in 7 countries. And, it seems, a fondness for impersonating a woman who's been dead for years." Adrian's head snapped toward her. "The real Isabella Turner died in a car accident 3 years ago," Margaret finished. "Which means Miss Hartwell has been using her identity to manipulate you." "It wasn't like that," Isabella said, her voice raw. "You mistook me for her. I never corrected you. I should have. But I didn't because..." "Because what?" Adrian's voice was deadly quiet. Because it was fun, letting me think you were some struggling consultant so I could play the hero. I fell in love with you, she said, the words breaking like glass in her throat. Adrian laughed once, bitterly. Love, you built this on a lie. Every moment, every touch, all of it. Margaret rose, satisfied. I think it's time you left, Miss Hartwell, and I suggest you stay far away from my son. Isabella looked at Adrian one last time, hoping to see even a flicker of the warmth from the night before, but his eyes were cold steel. I'm sorry, she whispered, and walked out. The aftershock. Back at Horizon Dynamics, chaos reigned. Damien Cross had doubled his efforts while she was gone. Markets were tumbling. Investors were spooked. And whispers about her relationship with Adrian Kane were spreading across the financial world like wildfire. The timing is perfect, Meyer said grimly as Isabella entered the war room. Damien's feeding the narrative that you've compromised your judgment. We've lost $4 billion in market value in 6 hours. And Adrian? Isabella asked quietly. Maya hesitated. Press conference this afternoon. Kane Global is joining Damien's consortium against us. The words were a knife twist. The man who had offered to protect her was now aligning himself with the one determined to destroy her. The war room at Horizon Dynamics buzzed with activity analysts hunched over laptops, legal advisors on conference calls, market data streaming in endless red columns on the wall screens. The air smelled faintly of burnt coffee and tension. Isabella stood at the head of the long glass table, her hands braced against the cool surface, eyes locked on the shifting numbers. She felt the weight of 12 years of empire building pressing on her shoulders. Get me my grandfather, she said without looking up. Meyer was already on it, calling now. Moments later, Edward Hartwell's voice came through the speaker. Even at 83, his tone carried the command of a man who'd built dynasties. I've been watching the news, he said dryly. You've managed to turn corporate headlines into a soap opera. I need the war chest, Isabella said. A pause. All of it? Yes, the war chest. $20 billion in liquid assets, set aside for emergencies, was a nuclear option. Using it would reveal the full scope of Horizon Dynamics resources, something she carefully kept hidden for years. This isn't just about Damien Cross, Edward said slowly. It's about that young man, isn't it? He hates me now, Isabella admitted. Thinks I played him for a fool. Did you? No, she said, her voice steady. I fell in love with him. Real love, not the calculated arrangements I've used in business. And now, I'm paying the price for thinking I could have both love and power. Edward's tone softened slightly. Then show them both what Isabella Hartwell can do when she's fighting for something that matters. The first strike, at exactly 2 p.m., 30 minutes before Adrian's press conference, Isabella set her plan in motion. The first move was surgical. Horizon Dynamics acquired Crosswell Holdings' primary lender, a small regional bank whose name rarely made headlines, but whose loans funded most of Damien's major projects. Within 40 minutes, every outstanding loan was called in. The second move was a scalpel disguised as a sledgehammer. King Global's technology infrastructure relied on a patchwork of licensing agreements with smaller firms. Half of those companies, unbeknownst to Adrian, were owned by Horizon Dynamics through shell corporations. Effective immediately, every license was terminated. By the time Adrian stepped up to the podium, the servers in his headquarters were already slowing. Contracts were void, systems grinding to a halt. The press conference livestream froze halfway through his speech, an irony not lost on Isabella. The confrontation. She wasn't surprised when Adrian appeared in her office at sunset. Security tried to stop him. She left instructions to let him through. He stormed in, still in his navy suit, tie skew, fury in every line of his body. The skyline behind her glowed in golds and blues, casting her silhouette in sharp relief. You destroyed my company, he said, his voice shaking with rage. I defended myself, she replied evenly, not turning from the window. You declared war this afternoon. I responded. This isn't war, it's annihilation. My employees are losing their jobs because of your revenge. She faced him fully now. No one will lose their jobs. I'm offering to buy Kane Global at fair market value. Your people will be taken care of. I don't want your money, he snapped. I want to understand. Was any of it real? Any of what we had? Her heart twisted. Every moment was real. Every touch, every word. The only thing that wasn't was my name. You let me think you needed saving. I did, she said quietly. Not financially, but emotionally. I built walls so high no one could reach me. You saw someone worth protecting, and I didn't want to lose that. His eyes were ice. How can I believe anything you say? How can I trust someone who deceived me so easily? Because I'm giving it all up, she said. He froze. What? She crossed to her desk and pulled out a thick legal file. These are the dissolution papers for Horizon Dynamics. Signed and notarized. I'm breaking up the company, selling the assets, and distributing the proceeds to my employees and charitable foundations. That's insane, he said, but his voice had lost some of its edge. This is your life's work. No, she said. My life's work was keeping people at a distance, but you got through anyway. Now I know what I've been missing. The proposal. There's one condition, she continued. I want you to oversee the liquidation. King Global will handle the process, keep the employees, manage the transition. You'll rebuild stronger than ever. He stared at her as if she'd just spoken another language. You give up billions of dollars for me? I was born rich, Adrian. The company was about proving I deserved the Hartwell legacy, but I don't need to prove anything anymore. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then, quietly, the woman I fell in love with, the one who helped me through chemistry class, who worked 3 jobs to pay for school, she was real. She was the part of me I never let anyone see, Isabella said. The part that wanted simple things, like dancing with someone who cared. He stepped closer, his hand brushing her cheek. I was so angry, so humiliated. I felt like you'd made me into a fool. You were never a fool, she whispered. You were the first person to see past the money to the woman underneath. His next words were so soft she almost missed them. Don't dissolve your company. She blinked. Would keep it, but let me run it with you as your partner. In business and in life, you have no idea what that means. The pressure, the threats. I know exactly what it means, he said, pulling her into his arms. I'm asking for all of it, the good and the bad. No more lies. Her heart beat hard against his chest. Are you sure? I've never been more sure of anything. When he kissed her, it tasted of forgiveness and new beginnings. 6 months later, the same crystal chandeliers of the Belmont Hotel cast their warm glow across the grand ballroom. But everything about the night felt different. The annual charity gala was in full swing, champagne flowed. Music wrapped around the guests like velvet, and the city's most powerful figures moved through the room in a dance of subtle negotiations and whispered deals. But Isabella Hartwell wasn't hiding in the shadows this time. Her gown, a shimmering silver creation that hugged her figure and caught the light with every movement, was unapologetically spectacular. At her side, Adrian Kane stood tall in a black tuxedo, his presence commanding enough to turn heads the moment they entered. His hand rested lightly at the small of her back, both protective and possessive. As they moved through the crowd, the diamond on her left hand caught the chandelier's glow, a silent declaration that the woman once accused of deception was now his fiancée. The changed landscape. The months since their reconciliation had been anything but quiet. In the days following their confrontation, Adrian had made good on his word. They had combined resources and expertise, restructuring Horizon Dynamics and Kane Global into a new entity, Kane Hartwell Corporation. The merger had shocked the financial world. What Damien Cross had envisioned as their ruin had instead become their greatest strength. Damien's own empire, Crosswell Holdings, hadn't survived the counterstrike. Within weeks, his failed takeover attempts had drained his liquidity. And when Isabella and Adrian seized the opportunity to acquire his most valuable assets, the remaining pieces of Crosswell collapsed. Tonight, Damien was here not as an equal, but as a subordinate, Crosswell Holdings was now a wholly owned subsidiary of Kane Hartwell, and Damien, stripped of his kingmaker persona, was an executive advisor in name only. Across the ballroom, Isabella spotted him. He stood with a drink in hand, his smile tight, his posture that of a man first to attend his rival's victory parade. When his gaze met hers, she lifted her champagne glass in a cool, unbothered toast. An unexpected ally. Not far away, Margaret Kane was holding court with a circle of society friends. She had been a formidable opponent once, but over the months, her frostiness had thawed. It had happened slowly. Margaret, watching Isabella's loyalty to Adrian, seeing how she handled the business with intelligence and integrity, recognizing that her son's happiness was not a byproduct of wealth, but of partnership. Now, when Margaret's eyes found Isabella's, there was a small, approving nod. A truce had become genuine respect. The partners, Maya Lopez, was also here, seated at a table near the orchestra, deep in conversation with a group of potential investors for Kane Hartwell's newest technology venture. She caught Isabella's eye and raised her glass in salute, before turning back to charm the table into considering another round of funding. The empire was stronger than ever, but it was no longer Isabella's alone. It belonged to both of them, built not on solitary ambition, but shared vision. The dance, ready for another dance. Miss Hartwell. Isabella turned to find Adrian smiling down at her, mischief in his eyes. Always, she replied. He led her onto the dance floor, the orchestra shifting into a smooth waltz. The world beyond the ballroom, the boardrooms, the market reports. The headlines faded to a low hum. Here, there was only the music, the way his hand fit against hers, the way his gaze locked on her as if she were the only person in existence. Any regrets? He asked quietly as they turned. Only one, she said, meeting his eyes. And what's that? That I didn't tell you the truth from the beginning. His smile softened. If you had, we might never have had that first night when you were just Isabella Turner, and I was just Adrian Kane. Two people falling for each other without complications. And now, she asked. Now, he said, drawing her closer, we get to be complicated together. For the rest of our lives. The storm passed. As the music swelled, Isabella realized the truth of it. She had nearly lost everything trying to protect her heart, the company, the man, the future she hadn't dared to imagine. But love, fragile as it had seemed, had proven strong enough to weather the storm. They had faced betrayal, corporate warfare, and the kind of public scrutiny that would have broken lesser alliances. And yet here they were stronger, united, unafraid. The hidden truth had indeed hit like a storm. But storms, she now knew, could clear the air for something far more beautiful to grow. When Adrian kissed her, there was no pretense, no deception, only the certainty of a woman who had found, in the man before her, the one thing she had never been able to buy, outmaneuver, or command. Trust. The gala wound down past midnight. The last of the champagne flutes emptied, the orchestra packing away their instruments. Outside, the night air was crisp, carrying the faint scent of rain from the Hudson. Isabella stepped out of the Belmont Hotel alongside Adrian, the city glittering round them. The stretch limousine waited at the curb, its polished surface reflecting the ballroom's lights like scattered constellations. When the door shut behind them and the driver pulled into traffic, the sudden quiet felt like stepping into another world. The hum of the engine was soft, the leather seats warm beneath her. Adrian loosened his tie, leaning back to look at her with that slow, searching gaze she had come to know so well. You handled tonight perfectly. She smiled faintly. You mean I didn't throw a drink at Damien? I was more impressed with the way you made him squirm just by looking at him. Adrian's eyes warmed. I think that unnerved him more than anything. Good, she said, her tone cool but satisfied. It was time he learned what losing feels like. Reflections. For a few minutes, they rode in comfortable silence, the city streaming past the windows in streaks of gold and silver. Isabella let herself really breathe for the first time in months. The war was over, the deals were done, and for once, the future wasn't a carefully drafted strategy. but something she could step into with someone she trusted. You know, Adrian said, breaking the quiet. 6 months ago, I thought you were the last person I ever want to see again. I remember, she murmured. You made that very clear. I was angry, he admitted, but underneath that I think I was scared. Scared of how much I'd let you matter. Her gaze softened. I was scared too. That's why I didn't correct you that first night. It was easier to be someone else than risk being myself. And now I want to be myself, she said simply. With you, the apartment. Instead of heading to his penthouse, the car turned toward the river and stopped in front of a sleek high-rise she didn't recognize. This isn't your place, she said as the doorman rushed to greet them. It's ours, Adrian said, leading her through the glass doors. She blinked. Ours. He guided her into the elevator, pressing the top floor button. I bought it last month. I thought maybe we should have a place that's just us. Not your territory or mine. Somewhere to start fresh. When the elevator doors opened, she stepped into a space flooded with light from floor to ceiling windows. The city stretched endlessly below, the river catching the reflections of the skyline. The apartment was elegant but unpretentious, warm wood floors, plush furniture, subtle art. No boardroom energy here, no reminder of corporate battlefields. This she began, her voice catching. This is perfect. The conversation they had to have. He poured glasses of wine from a bottle waiting on the counter, handing one to her before joining her at the window. I need to ask you something, he said. She turned toward him. Anything. No more lies, he said. Not about business, not about family, not about anything. She nodded, the promise settling between them like a seal. Agreed. And no more disappearing when things get hard, he added. Her lips curved faintly. You mean no more running out of restaurants mid-lunch to save my empire? That too. They both laughed, the sound lighter than it had been in a long time. Plans for the future. So, Adrian said, what's next for Kane Hartwell Corporation? I was thinking, she said slowly, that we use the next year to strengthen our foundations, make sure we're not just winning battles, but building something sustainable. And then, she looked at him, a spark of mischief in her eyes. Then maybe we take a year off. He raised an eyebrow. A year, travel, see the world, learn how to live without constant deadlines and market reports. You think we can survive that without driving each other crazy? She smiled. I think we might actually like it. The dance at home, later, as the rain began to fall outside, soft and steady against the glass. She put on a record from the small shelf by the wall, a slow jazz tune, rich with the warmth of a saxophone. Adrian set his wine down and held out his hand. Dance with me. In our living room, she teased. In our living room, he confirmed. She stepped into his arms, the familiar fit of their bodies easing every tension she hadn't realized she was still holding. They moved slowly, the city lights blurring beyond the rain-streaked glass. For a moment, she thought back to the first time they danced in that crowded ballroom, her pretending to be someone else, him believing in a version of her that didn't exist. Now there was no disguise, no false name, just Isabella Hartwell and Adrian Kane, moving together in quiet harmony. The promise. When the song ended, he didn't let her go. This is it for me, he said. There's no one else I want in my corner. In business, in life, it's you. Her throat tightened. Even when I'm impossible, especially when you're impossible, he said with a grin. She laughed softly, then grew serious. Then it's you for me too, no matter what storms come next. Deal, he murmured, sealing the promise with a kiss that carried the weight of everything they'd survived and everything still ahead. Outside, the rain washed the city clean. Inside, they stood together, knowing that whatever the future brought, they would face it side-by-side, partners, equals, and, at last, without a single shadow between them. 3 years later, Kane Hartwell Corporation was no longer just a powerhouse, it was the powerhouse. Their influence reached across continents, touching industries from advanced technology to sustainable energy, with a reputation for innovation that had reshaped entire markets. In the corner office of their glass-walled headquarters, Isabella Kane. She still caught herself smiling at the name stood with a steaming coffee in hand, watching the sunrise turn the Hudson into a ribbon of molten gold. The city below seemed calmer in those early hours, almost unaware of the storms that could erupt at the strike of a market bell. Behind her, Adrian's voice carried from the conference table. If we move on the Singapore deal now, we can secure the patents before Langford Group even sees it coming. Not yet, Isabella replied without turning. Let them think they're leading. We move when the market's overconfident. It had taken them 3 years to reach this rhythm, a seamless dance of instinct and strategy. Board meetings felt less like negotiations and more like chess games they played together, each move amplifying the other's strengths. The public face. The press loved them, the power couple of the decade, one headline had declared, showing them at a charity gala, his hand at her waist, her smile both warm and knowing. They weren't just a business success, they were a brand, and every public appearance seemed to drive their stock higher. But Isabella knew better than anyone that empires weren't built on glamour alone. Behind the champagne toasts and ribbon cuttings were sleepless nights, closed-door arguments, and decisions so risky they left her stomach in knots. Still, with Adrian beside her, she'd learned to carry the weight differently. The loneliness that once haunted her boardroom was gone. A personal shift. The first sign of change came in the smallest of moments. It was a Tuesday morning, rain slicking the streets below, when Isabella noticed Adrian lingering by the window, distracted. "What is it?" she asked. He hesitated, then glanced at her with an expression she couldn't quite read. "I've been thinking about the future. Our future." She tilted her head. "We're in the middle of 2 major acquisitions, Adrian. Which future are you talking about?" He smiled faintly. "Not the corporate one, the personal one. You ever think about slowing down?" The question caught her off guard. For as long as she'd known him, they'd both thrived on the thrill of the next move, the next deal. Slowing down to do what? She asked carefully. "To live," he said simply. "To have a family. To build something beyond the balance sheets." The unexpected threat. Before she could answer, Meyer, still their most trusted lieutenant, burst into the office, tablet in hand. "We have a problem," she said without preamble. Langford Group just announced a joint venture with Crosswell Holdings. Isabella's brows drew together. "Crosswell? I thought Damien Cross was done playing in the big leagues. He's been quiet for years, but apparently he's found a new patron, and they're targeting our Southeast Asia division. If they pull it off, we lose 1/4 of our market share there." Adrian's jaw tightened. "So much for a quiet week." Isabella set her coffee down. "No, this is more than just a market move. Damien wouldn't come at us unless he thought he could hit something personal." The private conversation. Later, in their apartment overlooking the city, Adrian poured them both a drink. The rain had turned into a mist, blurring the skyline in soft halos of light. "You didn't answer me earlier," he said. "About slowing down?" she asked, curling her fingers around the glass. "About a family." She took a slow breath. "It's not that I don't want it. I do. But we've spent years protecting this company from every threat. If Damien's back, we might be walking into another war. Then, maybe," Adrian said, "we fight this one differently. We don't just defend the empire, we make it strong enough to survive without us." She studied him, hearing the layers beneath his words. He wasn't just talking about strategy. He was talking about creating a life that wasn't constantly in the crosshairs of people like Damien and Cross. A new decision. The next morning, they sat side by side in the strategy room, Meyer projecting market data on the wall. "This move by Langford and Crosswell," Isabella said slowly, "isn't about taking our territory. It's about destabilizing us. And if they think personal distractions will make us weaker, they'll be very disappointed," Adrian finished. She glanced at him, a small smile tugging at her lips. "Let's give them the fight they're looking for. And when it's over, maybe we take that step, the one you've been talking about." Adrian's answering smile was the kind that reached his eyes, the promise of what's next. That night, they stood on their balcony, the city alive beneath them. "You know," Adrian said, sliding an arm around her waist. When this next storm hits, we'll probably be right back where we started fighting for everything. Maybe, Isabella said, but this time we're not fighting alone, and when it's over we'll have something worth more than any empire. He kissed her, the city lights flickering like stars around them. For Isabella, the future was no longer just a battlefield. It was a horizon one she'd face with her partner, her equal, and maybe, someday soon, the father of the family they'd build together. And if Damien Cross thought the last war had been brutal, he had no idea what was coming. The morning after the Langford Crosswell announcement, the Kane Hartwell Corporation trading floor felt like the eye of a brewing hurricane. The markets hadn't opened yet, but the analysts were already moving fast. Their voices clipped, their monitors filled with graphs pulsing red. Isabella walked in with her hair pulled back in a sleek twist. The steel gray suit she wore more armor than fashion. Adrian was already in the center of the room, scanning live feeds from the Asian markets, his expression unreadable. Meyer intercepted her at the elevator. "It's worse than we thought," she said without greeting. Langford and Crosswell aren't just targeting the Southeast Asia division. They're setting up a logistics chokehold: ports, freight, air cargo routes. If they control those, they can slow our supply lines to a crawl. Isabella's lips pressed into a thin line. "And the regulators, already in their pocket," Meyer replied grimly. Langford's charm offensive started months ago. Across the room, Adrian caught Isabella's gaze, motioning her toward the glass-walled strategy room. She followed, the door shutting behind them with a quiet click. "The enemy's message. Damien sent me a gift," Adrian said without preamble, sliding a small black envelope across the table. Inside was a single white card, embossed with a gold chess piece, the king, and the words, "Your move." Isabella stared at it for a moment before setting it down. Subtle as ever. "He wants us to know he's not just coming for the company," Adrian said. "He's coming for us. He tried that before," she replied evenly. "We won." Adrian leaned forward, his voice lower. "This time, he's not alone. Langford has the capital, Damien has the vendetta, and together, they're going to hit harder than anything we've faced." She met his eyes, her voice calm but edged. "Then we hit first. The first move." An hour later, they convened the core team: legal, acquisitions, tech in the war room, maps of Southeast Asia, and shipping routes glowed on the wall screens. "We can't just defend," Isabella began. "We take away their supply chain advantage before they lock it in." Adrian nodded. "That means going after their partners, quietly, buy the controlling shares before Langford can close the deal." Maya tapped a few keys, pulling up a list of target companies. "These are the most vulnerable. Most of them don't even realize Langford's circling." Isabella's gaze swept the list. "Good. We'll move through intermediaries. Keep our fingerprints off the transactions. Personal friction." By late afternoon, the plan was in motion: shell companies placing quiet bids, legal teams drafting airtight contracts. But when the meeting broke, Adrian lingered in the empty room with her. "About what we talked about the other night," he said carefully. "I meant it. I want a family with you. But if we dive headfirst into another all-out war, that's not going to happen anytime soon." Isabella's pulse ticked up. "I'm not choosing Damien Cross over us, Adrian, but I'm not letting him dismantle what we've built." "I know," he said. I don't want us to get so caught up in this fight that we lose sight of everything else." She reached for his hand, threading her fingers through his. "Then we fight it differently this time. Together. Every decision, every step, no more separate battlefields." Damien's counter. That night, as the city lights flickered against the rain-streaked windows of their apartment, Isabella's phone buzzed with a blocked number. She almost didn't answer, but instinct told her to. "Hello, Isabella," Damien's voice purred. She said nothing. "Langford sends his regards," he continued. "We'll be in Singapore next week to finalize the first phase. But I thought you should know this isn't just about business for me. It's personal, and this time, Adrian won't be able to protect you." Her voice was steady. "You should know by now, Damien, I don't need protecting." He chuckled. "We'll see." The line went dead. The resolve, when she told Adrian about the call, his jaw tightened, but his voice was calm. Good. Let him underestimate you. He's counting on us making the same moves we did last time, she said. So we won't. We'll rewrite the playbook. And when it's over, he asked quietly. She met his gaze. When it's over, we talk about more than just mergers and market shares. We talk about us. For a long moment, they stood there, the city stretching out around them like a battlefield waiting for the first strike. And Isabella knew this wasn't just the beginning of another fight. It was the beginning of the fight that would decide not only the future of their empire, but the life they wanted beyond it.